fat cells, they don't divide anymore. They just keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter. The nucleus just gets pinned to the wall like, I can't breathe, there's so much fat in here. One more time, interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. Very cool dance. You can do that for your friends. They will be ashamed of you. Redeem Academy. Yo, what is up, Science Squirrels? Johnny here with Redeem Academy. I'm here to help you get the most out of your education while giving God all the glory he deserves. Today, we are on lesson 3 of the DNA unit, and it's going to be about mitosis. That is the fancy science word for cell division. I'm going to be telling you 3 things, as always. I'll be telling you about some of the cells in your body that no longer undergo cell division and others that still do. I'll be telling you about the 4 stages of mitosis. And I will be telling you about a good way to think of 2 of the parts of the cell highly involved in cell division, the centrioles and the spindle fibers. Chicka-wang, that brings us to the big question. How is mitosis like the Great Commission? There was this guy, his name was Jesus, maybe you heard of him. He sent out his disciples in this moment called the Great Commission. All right, we're going to start with some videos of homeboys in the mud. All right, here we go. When I first got my driver's license, I don't know why, but for some reason, I just had this desire to go drive in the mud. Especially after it rained, I just wanted to go out into the forest, I live in the country, and make sure that when I came back, not one part next of my truck, we had this little old truck, had any blue left on it. It was a blue truck. And one of the things you discover, and maybe this guy's about to discover it, is sometimes those puddles, next. Oh, is this real? That can't be real. Okay, well, I wasn't doing this. But if this homeboy is actually achieving this right now, I am very impressed. Does he have a winch on? I don't know how he just did that.
That's a wall, Dad.
Ah, see, and this problem will occur sometimes. Is this guy going to get out of there? I don't know what it is about boys and playing in the mud, but as you get older, your toys just get bigger. Look at that. Well done. But sometimes you will end up getting yourself very stuck in the mud. And the first time I got very stuck in the middle of nowhere, this guy's experiencing what I'm talking about. You need to have some friends out there with you. Oh, this is it right here. You go through a giant puddle and just everything gets covered. It is the best feeling in the whole world. I have no idea what that says in Spanish. Don't hold me accountable. Yes, and so homeboy is using what's called a winch right now to get himself out. I'll be talking more about that later. What did those videos of trucks and Jeeps in the mud have to do with cell division? I will connect it. Give me time. Let's go to the notes. All right, we're going to start here on top. The first phase is called interphase. Now, I've got a little dance to teach you. Interphase starts like this. Then we're going to go to prophase. Then we're going to hit metaphase. Oh, it gets a little freaky. Okay, then we're going to come apart, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. I'll come back to that. But in interphase, the cell is in use. Let me show you. Okay, remember this video? You were a single cell, boom. Then you were 2 cells, boom. Then you were 4 cells, boom. 8 cells, 16 cells, and so on and so forth, and you just keep developing. So you start out as a single cell, but you rapidly divide and divide and divide. So when you very first begin, you're a single cell with 46 chromosomes, and every cell you have is dividing. But at some point, your body takes form and is kind of where it needs to be, especially in terms of your muscles and your brain and your spinal cord, your nerves. They kind of are where they need to be. And so a lot of your cells hit pause and stop dividing. So here's a picture of your muscles. There's actually different kinds of muscle. This slide shows skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle. There's 3 different types of muscle. If we look at real muscle under a microscope, it looks like this. This is skeletal muscle, the kind that attaches to bones, and it doesn't divide anymore. There's always exceptions, but for the most part, the muscles in your arms and legs don't divide anymore. They're just living in this stage called interphase, all the time static, not changing. Also, your bones, a lot of the cells in your bones, not really changing anymore. They're just kind of being there, doing their thing, although there is a little bit more cell division happening in bones than in muscles. Now this bone's cracked open, and you can actually see that on the edges of bones, there's what's called spongy bone. That it's not totally compact, but it's actually got like what looks like a sponge in it. And if we go down and look at it microscopically, there are little holes in bone. I remember the first time that I learned that bone was a tissue. I just thought, bone? Bone is like rock. How is bone a tissue? Now, bone is actually a tissue. And in those smaller dark holes, there are cells that live in there. And they actually, even those little cracks that come out of those dark holes, they actually have little tentacles from the bone cells that actually remodel the bone and help the bone stay healthy. And so there are cells moving around in the tissue of bone, keeping the bone healthy and remodeling the bone all the time. But those cells don't have a lot of division that they're doing anymore. They have a little more than muscle though. Now fat. Fat is another tissue that really doesn't divide anymore. As you get older, you get more fat usually, but your fat cells just get fatter. Now this is a picture from a cadaver. You can maybe see this is the belly button right here. These are the abs. So even this person who has quite a bit of fat, you can see multiple inches of fat on top of their abdominal muscles. This is like part of their six-pack here, but you can see all this fat on top of their six-pack. They still have a six-pack. It's just under all that abdominal fat there. But if we zoom in and look at fat cells, this is what fat cells look like. What's really funny about fat cells is they're just filled with fat, and we can see a nucleus right here. We can see another nucleus right here. This is a cross section of fat, so we're not going to see every nucleus, but I can circle a lot of the nucleuses of these fat cells. And the nucleuses are always pushed out to the side because fat cells are just full of fat, and if you're in the nucleus in a fat cell, you're getting shoved to the wall, like, oh, I can't breathe, because there's so much fat in the fat cell, the nucleus just gets pinned to the wall, like, I can't breathe, there's so much fat in here. Again, fat cells, they don't divide anymore. They just keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter. They're some of the biggest cells in the human body if you're a really fat guy. I'm a little bit sensitive about my fat cells, actually. And so we've got muscle cells that don't divide. We've got fat cells that don't divide. And your brain cells, they don't divide either. And they just start dying as you get older. It's like, man, I had so many brain cells when I was young. I'm starting to lose brain cells. I'm also starting to lose hair follicle cells, I think. And so there's lots of cells as you're an adult. And even as a kid, those cells aren't dividing anymore. So this would almost lead you to ask the question, well, do any of our cells really divide that much anymore? There are a lot of cells that also divide a lot. One example is your skin cells. You could put your arm over your sister and just go like this, be like, I just covered you in my skin cells. There's tons of skin cells that come off all the time. Our skin on the outside, it's actually dead. And there's a thin layer of skin stem cells at the bottom that are constantly pushing out new cells. You have new skin every 30 days on the top. Another example is our blood. Blah, blah, blah. Every 3 months, we have completely brand new red blood cells. And this comes, you would think maybe that comes from your blood somewhere. It actually comes from your bones. Check this out. This guy's a meat cutter. Manly job.
Beef femur. I'm gonna cut this in half on the bandsaw and show you where bone marrow comes from. Check it out. Take that, roast that up, you have some beautiful beef bone marrow.
Awesome. So there's bone in here, but there's also bone marrow in this portion. And it's called red bone marrow in that spot. And then in this spot here, it's yellow bone marrow. So there's two different types of bone marrow. So here's a cartoon version that helps kind of make the point a little better. This is a long bone. This is like a cartoon version of the femur, which is the long bone in your leg, the upper bone of your leg. So the blue stuff is cartilage, allows the bone to move freely. But then this red here represents spongy bone that has blood in it. And that blood is the stem cells for making red blood cells. And then this yellow is called yellow bone marrow, and it is like mostly fat that we store for energy. Now what's interesting is if you look at this bone marrow under the microscope, which is what this picture is, you can actually see where these arrows are pointing. There's some cells undergoing mitosis. And this picture in particular, we're looking at the phase called anaphase, where the chromosomes are coming apart. And I believe this picture right here, we're looking at telophase, where a new nucleus is forming on each cell. And all of these cells are basically stem cells that are becoming red blood cells, although the biggest cells you see like this one are actually going to become your platelets. These are actually fat cells, and then these might be stem cells for white blood cells, I'm not sure. So it's really brilliant what God did there. You have empty space in your bones because we would be too heavy, or it would be unnecessary weight to over-strengthen our bones. And so there's empty space in the bones, and so God, being the brilliant engineer he is, he's like, hey, let's not over-engineer these bones. Hey, we've got some empty space here. What can we put in this empty space? Let's put the stem cells for our blood in that space. So anyway, cell division is happening, but it's only happening in the places where it needs to happen. But interphase, that first phase that I was just talking about, that's where by weight, most of our tissues are actually hanging out all the time. So our muscles are hanging out in interphase, our brain cells are hanging out in interphase, our fat cells are hanging out in interphase. And so interphase is actually not part of mitosis. Mitosis is the fancy word for cell division. Interphase is just the regular phase of a cell's life. So we come to interphase here, and we're not going to draw chromosomes. We're going to draw chromatin. It's just the thread of DNA that's all spread out everywhere because the DNA is in use. So I'm just going to draw purple thread everywhere because the DNA is spread out being used. So I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to write chromatin. Now I'm going to go back 2 lessons. Remember that chromatin is that fiber of DNA that's kind of like wound up around histones. And it's loosely wound up in there so that it can be used still. And in this phase, we say DNA is in use. So interphase, in use. All right, so that's every cell. Interphase all the time, in use. And then mitosis begins. Boom, prophase. And the chromosomes become present. Let's put that in our notes. Okay, the first stage of mitosis, prophase. And the chromosomes become present. I'm going to put that under here. So I'm going to put P and underline P, and it stands for present. So now I'm going to draw my chromosomes. Now whenever we draw chromosomes, I try to draw them like a little tornado. And they're going to be replicated chromosomes, so they're going to be shaped like an X. And whenever we do a drawing of mitosis, for some reason, you always draw 2. You draw the big one and the little one. It would be way too hard to draw 46 of them, even though that's actually how many you have. So I draw a big chromosome and a little chromosome and call it good. All right, so there's my 2 chromosomes that have become present. They just condensed from chromatin. They came together, and there they are. All right, let's zip over here, write a few words down. So the fancy word for the process of cell division that just began is called mitosis. The center of a cell where we're going to find the DNA is the nucleus. All right, number 6, in this phase, DNA is in use, but this is not part of mitosis. That's called interphase. In this phase, chromosomes become present as the DNA coils up. That's called prophase. Okay, so we have interphase, the cell is in use and existing, and then we come to mitosis and bam, prophase, first stage, metaphase, second stage. The chromosomes line up in the middle. All right, so this bad boy is called metaphase. I'm going to write the word middle. Underline the M's, metaphase, middle. Now, notice in prophase, the nucleus started to degrade. Okay, so see, in interphase, we had a whole nucleus. In prophase, our nucleus started to break down. Now we've reached metaphase. There is no longer a nucleus at all. Okay, and now I'm going to draw the chromosomes in, and you need to line them up right in the middle. So I'm going to draw my bigger chromosome on top. These little guys are going to be called centrioles. I'm going to go back and color all of my centrioles yellow, and I'm actually just going to color kind of around them yellow. So here they are, and then also up here, I'm going to color yellow. And then there are these things called spindle fibers, and I believe this is the first time the spindle fibers are going to attach as well. Although I can't remember if they fully attach at metaphase or not till anaphase. So now we're going to go watch an animation of this. Animations do a great job of putting everything into motion. Here we go. All right, so we're starting in prophase. We're actually in interphase right now. But as the chromatin condenses into a chromosome, which we watched in yesterday's lesson as well, we form chromosomes. Now, these are replicated chromosomes, and so they're in the shape of an X. They have a centromere in the middle. That's where the spindle fibers will attach eventually, the centromere. And remember that the legs are called sister chromatids because they're identical. And there are spindle fibers. They grow out from the things called centrioles. And the centrioles migrate to the poles. Now in this video, the poles are at the top and bottom. My poles are on the sides. I guess it's in prophase that these things start to attach. So we'll have to go back to our video or to our picture and draw that. So the nucleus disappears all in prophase. Now we're hitting metaphase. And so yeah, they're fully attached in metaphase, and the chromosomes line up at the equator or in the middle of the cell. And then things are going to get ripped apart in anaphase, but we're not there yet. All right, so we'll go back to prophase here, and we'll just start drawing our spindle fibers. And the fact that our spindle fibers are even starting to grow. And then we're going to have our spindle fibers totally attached to the centromeres of our chromosomes here. All right, now that brings us to anaphase. So remember, interphase, DNA is in use. Prophase, chromosomes become present. Metaphase, chromosomes line up in the middle. Anaphase, chromosomes come apart. So let's see it happen in our animation here. We hit anaphase, and the chromosomes get ripped apart and dragged. Imagine I tied a rope to your waist and you were unconscious, and I dragged you across a gym floor. I'm not threatening to do this. But your legs and arms would drag behind your body. So that's how we need to draw this. Okay, here's your chromosomes, arms and legs, dragging behind the centromere. And here's your smaller one, doing the same. Spindle fibers getting pulled on or shortening, depending on how far you understand this. And yellowing up our centrioles. This is called anaphase. And anaphase means apart. Now remember the mudding? So if you go out mudding, you really need to have one of these on the front of your truck. It's called a winch. And they usually put them on the front of a Jeep or a truck that's out there mudding. And it's got a cable that comes out of it. So when I see centrioles in a spindle fiber, I think of a winch and a cable on the front of a winch. So this guy, he's out there and he's stuck in a ditch because he's out been having fun. And he's pulling the cable out of his winch. His winch is actually inside of the bumper. And it's just like these mudding cowboys out here who are out having a good time in the pond. They're stuck. And so they're going to pull the cable out of their winch. And so this Jeep is just totally stuck. So his homeboy comes up, pulls the clip off, and he goes up, and they got to get some slack out of the winch. And they pull it up and they put it around this tree, and trees are incredibly strong. And so they release, they've got some kind of electrical power of a winch and the motor of a winch, and they attach it to the tree, and then they just pull him right up with the winch in tension. It gives him just enough kick to get out of the mud, and loosen himself and then keep going. Now, people don't just use winches to pull their truck out. This guy's got a winch mounted on a trailer, and he's pulling a dead tree out of the ground. So there's a live tree over there. You can see the green branches. This tree's dead, so it's probably not that strong in the ground anymore. And he's just yoinking it out of the ground off of that trailer. Here's another great one. They've got a chain around a stump, and they've got a tire to lift it upward and not pull it straight back. And they pull a whole stump out of the ground with a winch. Love that. So when I see centrioles and spindle fibers, I always think of a winch and a cable. And that's kind of a great metaphor for a spindle fiber and centrioles. Think of a winch pulling on cables. Think of spindle fibers as the cables. Think of centrioles as the winch. That's not exactly how it works, but that's a great first understanding of it. Think of the winches of the cell that pull on chromosomes as centrioles. And think of the cable that attaches the chromosomes to the centrioles as spindle fibers. And when DNA is spread out in the nucleus being used, we talked about that earlier, that's called chromatin. I'll go down here. In this phase, the chromosomes line up in the middle. That's metaphase. And in this phase, chromosomes come apart. That's during anaphase. So we've done interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase. What's next? Telophase. So then the cell begins to tear. All right, so during this phase, telophase, the cell begins to tear. Look, you can see it's starting to tear. Okay? The cell begins to cleave apart. And a new nucleus is forming. So telophase is tear. All right, so there's the end of anaphase. Telophase begins, new nucleuses form, and the chromosomes are going to spread out again into chromatin. Finally, at the end of telophase, the cell is going to go through what's called cytokinesis, and it's going to form two new cells that have a special name. They're called daughter cells. Okay, so we have a new nucleus forming. I just put off here, this is a nucleus. We're going to fill our nucleus with chromatin again. Okay, we no longer have spindle fibers. All right, and then we've got some chromatin in these last two cells as well. And we have two new daughter cells. So at the very end, the cells split in a process called cytokinesis. One more time. Interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. Very cool dance. You can do that for your friends. They will be ashamed of you. All right, in this phase, the cell begins to tear in two. That is called telophase. And a fancy term for the cell being split in half is called cytokinesis. I've always thought cytokinesis sounds best with a karate chop built in. So that brings us back to the big question, how is mitosis like the Great Commission? So this has always blown my mind. It's called exponential growth. We will use ChatGPT to demonstrate. All right, here's the first question. If a bacteria multiplies by cell division every 10 minutes, how long until the population reaches 1 million? You might think like, I don't know, like first you have 2, then you have 4, and that's 20 minutes later, then you have 8, that's 30 minutes later. Like this is gonna take forever, right? Maybe like 10 years or something. Check this out. So the math problem is simple, 2 to the n. In about 200 minutes, you hit 1 million bacteria. What? That is so fast. In 200 minutes, you've got 1 million bacteria. It's called exponential growth. It sort of takes off kind of slow and then, okay? So in this, that is so fast, right? Because it goes 2, okay, slow, 4, slow, 8, slow, okay, 16, slow, 32, slow, 64, starting to get somewhere, 128, 256, 512, 1,024. I can't do the math this high anymore. But it just suddenly goes really fast. What's 1,024 times 2? And you call yourself a science teacher. 2,056. Yeah, that's right. No, 2,048. Okay, and then 4,000, and then 8,000, and then 16,000, and then 32,000, 64,000, 128,000, and then 256,000, and then 512,000, and then 1 million. It's just that fast. I mean, it didn't take me that long to say it. Exponential growth speeds up so fast, okay? In the same way, look at what Jesus said to do. Jesus, last thing he says to his disciples in Matthew, therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you even to the end of the age. Cell division is multiplication, okay? Just 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4. Jesus' method of spreading the gospel is the same. It's not supposed to be, even though sometimes it is this way, it's not supposed to be one guy on a stage telling 1,000 people. I mean, that's fine too. It's supposed to be you tell your friend and he becomes a Christian. And then he tells his friend and he becomes a Christian. And you're telling another friend and he becomes a Christian. And it just multiplies. And you and another guy, and that's 2. And then both of you go tell another guy, and that's 4. And then 4 people tell 4 more people, and that's 8. And boom, 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 boom. It can spread. Christianity can spread so fast because it's just everybody's telling everybody. When people really believe the gospel, it's something you have to tell people because it's so real to you. And it's just naturally spreading because it's so good and it's so real and it's so right and it's so true. And that's when Christianity's healthy and good and right. When it's forced on people, no, that's not what Jesus wanted. Jesus doesn't want Christianity to be forced on people. He wants people to love it because it's good. Taste and see that the Lord is good. And when you taste and see that the Lord is good, it's just natural that you want to tell other people about it. I always say it like this. I love pizza. I think you've heard me talk about that. If there's free pizza somewhere, God's grace is a free gift. If there's free pizza somewhere and you just got a free pizza, you can't help but go tell your friends, guys, there's free pizza over there. Go get some free pizza. The grace of God is so much better than free pizza, but it's something so good that you want to tell people, hey, go get this. This is so good for you. And it's just natural to share it with other people because it's so good. And it will just naturally spread person to person like that. So share your faith with people. That's what God designed you for. And cells do it too. They just grow naturally, dividing, multiplying, just like the Christian message is supposed to. Hope this was a good lesson for you. Have a great day. Peace out, Girl Scouts.